Over the past year or so, I've been reviewing devices mainly for Verizon. Honestly, everyone that I've reviewed has been a Verizon device. However, I was contacted a couple of weeks ago by XDA asking if I would review this device, the HTC Droid DNA. Again, it's a Verizon device, but it came directly from HTC. Does that really make a difference? Not entirely. However, that does mean this review is going to go in two different directions. You're going to have one video that is entirely consumer-oriented, Android geek-oriented, and then the other video that's primarily focused on development, which will be posted over on XDA Developers. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about this phone in terms of specs. The Droid DNA is rocking a 5-inch 1080p display. It's Super LCD3, which is kind of interesting. Most of the devices we're seeing now are Super AMOLED or some other form of AMOLED, not Super LCD. And actually it says Super LCD3, so I may be off entirely with that. But at least at the time of the device's creation, it had the highest resolution and the highest pixel density of any smartphone on the market, and it is still one of the highest, if not the highest. It features a 1.5 GHz quad-core Qualcomm S4 Pro processor, and that one's a mouthful. It has 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of built-in storage, a 2020 mAh battery that is not end-user replaceable, an 8 megapixel rear-facing camera, a 2.1 megapixel front-facing camera, both of which have f2.0 lenses in them, and actually both of which are supposed to support 1080p video recording. And of course the other stuff. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, micro USB, headset jack, micro SIM, things like that. And just in case I forgot to mention it, it is running Android version 4.1.1 with HTC Sense 4 on it. And now onto the consumer part of the review. Having used this device over the last 2 weeks, I'm extremely impressed, honestly. Fits very well in the hand. Very comfortable, very stylish, very, very powerful. Starting off top to bottom, really, processing power. Very powerful. I haven't found anything I can throw at it yet that is really gonna balk at it. Although, the grand majority of new devices you can say that exact same thing about. So, yeah, that's a thing. Having a quad-core processor and 2 gigs of RAM means that just about anything you're gonna throw at it is gonna work just fine. I've thrown a couple of games at it, nothing really intense. It came with a game called Reign of Amira from Qualcomm Studios, so I'm gonna assume that that's somehow related to the Qualcomm processor. That runs just fine, however the graphics in it look kind of like a Gameloft game that I played from X number of years ago when I got my first Android device, so it's really hard to judge it based on that. Minecraft is fine and stuff. Alright, and here is a video taken with the rear-facing 8 megapixel camera. It should be at 1080p and it should have image stabilization running. I'm using the exact same lighting that I have here in my studio, my home studio with my camera, so let me know what you think. And this is going to be a somewhat similar video, but this is using the front-facing 2.1 megapixel camera. Same lighting. Honestly, the video that I can see here looks pretty decent. I don't know how it's going to sound. It looks like it might be just a little bit grainy, but again, let me know what you think of it down in the comments. There's a little bit of motion blur, so it looks like it might be at quite a low frame rate, so that's another thing to consider. I've done a few other tests here and there with it, and it's okay. It's a cell phone camera still. Really, it's not going to make me jump out off the shelf and buy it or anything, but it's also not terrible. In lower light, again, you're going to get some of that motion blur and you're going to get some graininess when the light gets really low. The first night I had it, I did a very, very quick test video with it, and yeah, it was kind of rough. But the lighting in here was very low as well. In terms of call quality, I've made a couple of calls, including some very important calls to me that came through very nicely. Phone handled just fine, didn't get hot in any way. Actually, that's something that I should mention. It may just be my Galaxy Nexus that I'm completely used to. Galaxy Nexus gets hot very, very easily. This one never broke a sweat, never got warm. I could leave it in my pocket all day at work, you know, pull it out when I need it, but keep it in a very tight pocket all day, and no issues with heat, no issues really with battery life, but we'll get to that later. But the point I was making, phone calls sound just fine, no graininess, no grittiness or anything. I actually had to forward my personal number over to it, so I wasn't really able to make calls from it because I didn't do the Google Voice thing this time around. But all the calls I received, no issues. Actually, no, one issue. And this is entirely up to this phone entirely, nothing else. Verizon has these things called ringback tones that I don't make a lot of phone calls, so I was not really familiar with. But the first time I tried to call it to make sure forwarding was working, I got this weird classical music thing playing. And I did a little bit of reading, like 5 minutes of reading, and found out you can set ringback tones on these. So when someone calls you, instead of getting the phone call ring, 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 they get, classical music or hip hop or metal or whatever else you want to play for them. So yeah, I very quickly went into the My Verizon mobile app and disabled that because that's obnoxious. At least in my opinion. There are going to be some people out there that enjoy that, but I don't like that. Now in terms of the battery life, I actually did a bit of a no-no here. I kind of left the phone sitting for a few days, and the battery was just fine. Like I said, I would occasionally pick it up from my desk and I would check email with it, or I would pick it up and check the battery or something like that. I let it sit for quite a few days that way, and the battery just kept right on going. The manufacturer says that it can take like 350 or 360 hours of standby time, which is a lot of hours of standby time. In real world scenario, you're looking at probably 7 or 8 days of standby time if you just leave it alone. In real world usage scenario, I've seen this make it through an entire day with no issues, down to like 38% left, and that's working in a place that is called the black hole because there is no cell service in there. So it spends the majority of the day fighting to get a signal and occasionally hitting a 3G or a 4G connection very, very limitedly, if that's a word. Limited, in a limited fashion. Whereas some other phones, like my Galaxy Nexus, tend to just die before the day is over, this one could make it through the entire day. In fact, it has made it through the entire day, and right now, it's sitting right at 40%. And I've been testing things and doing this and installing apps and reading email and actually using this. I actually had an hour and a half long phone call earlier today on this, and still 40% battery life left after working the entire day at my day job. So battery life is very impressive, and it ought to be because the battery is not user replaceable. So if it were bad, you would be in big, big trouble. But I think that does get down to the end of it, which for me is aesthetic. And honestly, this is one of the nicest phones I've ever held. If you saw my HTC Windows Phone review from a little while back that was not very good, the phone itself was amazing. This one, I don't care for the build quality quite as much. I don't like the style as much, but I do like the style of it in general. Very, very slim on the edges, and it kind of bevels out to the center. Very well designed, very well constructed. Very, very slim, not terribly heavy, but it's a huge screen that's 1080p. So it all comes together to build a really, really nice package with some very minor things that I don't care for, personally. Just me. Power button on the top. It's a little better than a lot of the HTCs I've used, but it is still, it's almost recessed. It's almost flat with the top of the device. It's gotten easier for me to find it, but it's still hunt and peck trying to figure out where that button is. Yeah, I can sometimes hit it just right. Other little weirdness, and again, this is just me, volume rocker is on the right-hand side of the device. I'm used to it being on the left. That's just a nitpick. Another one that's kind of bugging me, and again, this may be for weather resistancing or something, there's a flap over the USB port here at the bottom. And by the way, USB MHL, so you can use an MHL HDMI adapter. I'm sure you could, with the right kernel, use a USB to a USB on the go to MHL adapter. I have not tried any of those things though. But you have this little flap here with this little rubber plug inside of it that can be a royal pain in the butt to try to fiddle around and get open in the dark when you're trying to plug this phone in. And the last thing I probably should mention is just Sense. If you're not a fan of Sense, this is not going to be for you unless you want to root it and ROM it and pull all the stuff that I'm going to talk about over on XDA to it. You can also put just a different launcher on it, but in my case, I'm not a huge fan of the whole settings menu and the dialogues and everything. And honestly, the bar at the bottom, it feels like a waste of space because you have those 5 icons, which is great, but it's not using the entire bottom of the screen. Again, my hang-up's not yours. It just kind of looks like Sense hasn't evolved all that much since the gingerbread days when I really saw it a lot. Other than that, amazing phone. Very, very powerful, excellent battery life. The speaker, very good. The Beats stuff did not really make any difference for me. I plugged my phone into the car using the aux plug. Tried the Beats stuff on and off, and really all it did was turn the bass up about this much. Didn't make all that much difference to me. And I say that about every time I touch the Beats stuff. It's just there. It doesn't really matter to me. But the external speaker was just fine. I was playing a game on it earlier and it was very, very audible, with it only turned up about halfway to 2/3 of the way up. There's probably a lot more I could talk about with this thing. However, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for now. Excellent design, excellent performance, excellent battery life. If this is in your price range, definitely worth a look. And if you want to know more about developing on it and what the XDA community has been doing with it, go ahead and check out the video that'll be over on XDA Developers. I'll have the link to that down in the video description. But that's going to be all from me for today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.